All right, great. Do you want to do a quick introduction just to let everyone know what you do and who you are as well? A little bit more about who you are.
Sure. So as you can tell from my title, I'm loads of words pinned together. But what that actually means is that I work on the programmatic supply chain, focused on typically technology partners because I work on the global team, but also more and more with media owners on how our investment is ending up where it's ending up and the data and technology that's being applied along the way. And that's me.
Great. So I'm Martin, and I'm Chief Product Officer for KINESSO, which is part of Media Brands. So essentially, we sit as the digital arm of our front house agencies, and Initiative and Media Hub now. And my role is essentially to look after all of our crafts, so that's all of our digital elements, and work out our go-to-market strategy for each one of those crafts. So whether that's search, programmatic, social, and in the background of that, I try and build products and ways of taking those products, to your point earlier on, which was to make them more commercially valuable, right? So that we aren't just doing what you guys do, which is lumping it in to our ultimate deal set and going, there you go, client, you've got this all added in. So I look after the data and technology team alongside the commerce team as well.
And I'm Arshiya. I'm strategy director at Dentsu, which is why I strategically sat here. I sit within the programmatic team, helping them navigate through the agency between the product team, the planning team, the partnerships, and bringing all of those services to our client, which is in our newly formed Addressable and Commerce department.
Thank you. Okay, fantastic. I'm going to kick off with the same question that I started the publisher panel with. So look, given the importance of audience segmentation, how are you advising your clients, and that's I guess brands, right, on their strategies and where they're investing their money? Because it's definitely changed over the last 10 years, but even just in the last 4 years, it's changing. So let us know what's changing from your side of things.
Well, I'll go first then.
Yeah.
So it's obviously been quite a journey. The deprecation of the cookie timeline has moved quite a bit. That obviously impacts things. So I think there's a bit of complacency. And obviously we think we're in the final stretch and we should be there within the next 12 months. But it's kind of that stop-start for clients is very disconcerting. And obviously to get consistent kind of investment and growth in a channel, you're looking for certainty, you're looking for reassurance, you're looking for that understanding of how you're targeting today and your measurement used today will be applied, looking back year on year. And so we've had 20 years of the cookie, and the way that our clients and our teams have used that has changed massively over that time, but it's always using that same baseline measurement. So you can look back and you're like, I understand where my baseline was and how I'm working against it. And so until you hit that kind of final deadline, there's a challenge of how much do I lean in? How much of my budget do I work on testing new things? How do I innovate while at the same time maintaining my core KPIs? Because, as much as obviously a room of publishers here who are experts on this, because you've had a lot of your audience move cookieless over time with different browsers, for clients, it's all about maintaining their sales at the end of the day. So they've been able to achieve their objectives within that shrinking pool of users. And so this last change is massive. And so our side, we've worked on, we announced in Q4 our partnership with Google Chrome to run an initiative on privacy sandbox testing. And we're trying to support them and kind of build that last year of learnings to mean that there is certainty in the open web. They do feel comfortable buying with quality media owners. And I think that sometimes we need to split those parts in two, of what happens for the open web and what happens for quality publishers. Because a lot of the things that we say about open web activation is about open exchange, about a technology buying against a predefined performance goal. Whereas I think there's still a lot to be done, and I'm trying to encourage it at GroupM to get closer with partners to understand the value of your data more. But it's that challenge of trust but verify, which, well, I've gone on a bit, but you see what I'm saying? Like 20 years to 1 year, that's our big challenge of bringing that reassurance to clients.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think the biggest issue that we have in general is advertisers aren't as far progressed as you sometimes would hope they would be, and sometimes would imagine they would be. So, often we're still having conversations around their own consent. How have they collected it? Is it usable? How do we bring it into the environments where we can just target off the back of it? So whether that's clean rooms, how much money do they want to invest in technology, people around that technology, how much they want to pay us to do the heavy lift to bring these things in. So there's a little bit of, I wouldn't say inertia, well, probably I would say inertia. There's inertia because people are waiting to see what happens and waiting to see when that deadline drops, what really impacts their results, even though we tell them on a daily basis, measurement is going to fundamentally change. It's really important that they get ahead of the curve. Our teams test, they will test where they can test, but again, we're limited because we have to deliver results, we have to deliver outcomes, and so we still have to hit our numbers or else we go off a pitch and nobody wants to lose the client, right? So there is that tension in the agency. So there's a little bit of getting advertisers to understand where their MarTech is and what they're doing with it, how much they need to invest, how they need to get that data in a place that we can use it. Those advertisers that don't have data, so ones that are kind of selling through retailers, what can we do on our side from a commerce perspective, start helping them collect that data, understand that data, and then kind of drive performance post-cookie. Lots of stuff going on there. There's a restructuring on how we think about measurement, right? So we are slowly changing all of our measurement frameworks, right? We work to quite well mapped out measurement frameworks. So, you kind of have from the impression to the click to the conversion and everything in between that we try and pull different strings on. That's a big undertaking, and that's an undertaking that we have to do for every single client. So no one's standard. Then we think about products. What can we bring to market to help clients solve for that? So obviously modeling is the next big thing, or the thing that we are doing, but the next big thing that clients have to buy into. So no longer are we going to rely on that sort of view through rate to click to conversion to attribute back. Like, we're going to have to model a lot of that data, and we have to get clients to be really comfortable with that. So that's a whole piece. And then there's something around targeting, which maybe I'll let you answer, because I'll just carry on talking.
No, it's literally when you said about making clients comfortable, you can't make them comfortable with something that isn't even set in stone yet. So as much as we've warned them for a while about what's going to be impacted, no one wants to test anything new unless there's proof it's actually going to work, and it's not going to fundamentally change everything from day zero, and there's nowhere to go since then. So we have solutions in-house anyway. Since 2017, we'd been doing our own contextual offering for our clients, which wasn't relying on cookies anyway. We'd already been working closer with publishers in clean supply initiatives, and we'd also been developing our own identity solution. So that had been non-cookie reliant from day one, and our clients have been aware of those solutions. But in terms of changing everything that they're doing on the grand scheme of things, that's where we need to work closely with technology partners, and they are the ones helping us get closer to the publishers without having to change everything individually.
Thank you. And I think, you make some really good points, especially with the brands being further behind than us, because I think there's a lot of explanation that needs to happen when we talk about why we do what we're doing and the strategies we've put in place, and why using first-party data will be helpful. Do you see like you're consolidating? Are you using less publishers to do the same thing that you would have done previously? Or do you feel like you're doing more testing and learning?
I mean, again, it's kind of the way I think about it is very split between what we're doing on the open exchange, which is tech-led, and what we're doing in a partnership basis with media owners. And I think that, obviously, you've seen the reports. The industry stats are quite high in terms of number of partners. So if you're calling each one of them publishers, I think people probably are not using less. We're trying to, but it's how you make sure you balance scale, reach, activation of local content, of diverse content, of sustainable content, hitting all of those markers that will allow the best mix of clients, while doing it in a safe way is, and especially we talked about it earlier, like AI generated content, like how do people feel about that, and I feel those are some areas that we still need to tackle. But in general, we're trying to make sure we can work with a core set of partners there and still access the best of the open web. But on a direct basis, I not necessarily consolidation, but deeper partnerships. Like someone talked about going client direct as a media owner. I mean, I'm not a client lead, but I think it's great. So maybe they disagree with me, but from my perspective, like having those deeper conversations is brilliant. Like I want them to understand exactly how to access the best of your content. And your users best, they know their customers best. Having a conversation, you can help maximize that performance. So our general ethos is, fewer, better partnerships,
Yeah.
and that's what we want to encourage with that kind of direct activation.
How about you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's exactly the same, right? So we are always wanting to invest in fewer people, because obviously that gives us more kind of power and kind of better conversations, better opportunities to do integrations, better ways of doing measurement feedback loops and all of that stuff. So I think there's a general consensus that we will work more with you, perhaps than we have done over the last 5 years, where it kind of all spiraled out into the ether, and we were like, great, Programmatic, solving all of the challenges that we had previously, and we're not having to raise IOs anymore, and isn't this fantastic? And we're just following the cookie to wherever it's leading the performance. We probably steered too hard on that side, and we made lots of relationships within the sort of tech ecosystem. Whereas when I started my career, like, everyone knew every publisher, and we had a floor of people that kind of, you would ask who your guardian contact was, and someone would go, oh, they're coming in about 8 minutes, so just go and see them. And I think that's kind of disappeared. There's not as many people coming into our offices as there used to be. So hopefully that will come back, because I think that's really important. People buying from people is still hugely valuable. I'll take Rory's point. I think it's really good that we lean into conversations where we get advertisers and partners, publishers in a room to have a proper conversation, because again, the data that you guys are sitting on is the data that we want to get access to, and it's the data that the client ultimately wants to be able to use as well for the effectiveness of their campaign. So it's really sort of a three-way conversation about how can we deliver the scale and effectiveness, bring your data into that, use it as a measurement barometer to help us prove results, but also feed that back into the client so that they're learning something new every time.
I mean, I think it does depend on what you want to achieve, though, because when it comes to driving awareness, or it comes to those bigger partnerships, then it's very easy to talk to the Guardian or those individual publishers that you were mentioning. But when it comes to trying to deliver conversions, or like cross-channel measurement, or proving that where you're doing something in the funnel, there are 200 publishers on the IAB Gold Standard list that are fully fraud-free and compliant and privacy-centric, and tick all of those boxes. And those aren't 200 individual conversations that we're having with our clients, or with individual budgets, and stretching them further down and granularly talking about what someone calls an apple versus what someone calls a pear, because you want that holistic support from the agency to deliver our campaigns and deliver that measurement and achieve these conversions and achieve these driving forces that we're doing. So the conversations that we're having are with fewer platforms and that type of thing, because we have to have the conversation earlier down about what will happen down the line, so that the 200 plus will see the benefits of that. So we may be working with fewer platforms, but we will be working with all the same amount of publishers and beyond that form underneath that.
Kind of like a streamlined way, isn't it, rather than that relationship that we used to have. And you mentioned earlier that you've been working on measurement that doesn't rely on cookie data. So I would like to, start with you, because I guess you might be way further ahead than everyone else. And so what are the challenges that you've seen along the way? Because I think everyone's going to face the similar challenges you've already been through.
Yeah.
And then what are the wins that you also see coming based on the fact that you've started first?
Well, one challenge has been that while the solutions have been coming up, so Privacy Sandbox is saying you can start testing on this, no one can measure it just yet and prove that it works. So we can't really change the dial on that. But what we can do is things that we've been doing already as an agency, like econometrics modeling, or being more clever in the way we're starting to bid. So this is where I see the open market and programmatic buying not going away, because we're going to have to start doing custom bidding and, like putting value on different things and doing different weighting to what we call important. We've been doing attention for over 5 years when we started the panel with Lumen. So, we've been putting that emphasis on different things to measure what we can, and driving that value has been what we've been able to do in the meantime while everyone figures everything out.
Yeah, I mean, the econometrics is essentially where we're all going to end up, right? And it's going to be some form of econometrics, which is great because advertisers really understand it, particularly the kind of on the brand side where they've been doing TV, out of home, and all of that stuff. What we are trying to do, and what we've got pretty good at doing, at least where we're testing it, is to get enough of the data stream from the digital channels, right? So I'll very much talk at a digital channel level rather than the publisher channels, because that's much more nuanced and the data's not quite there yet, is to bring that into our own data science teams and our own econometric modeling to be able to take really hot takes on that. So we do that on a weekly basis at the moment to be able to go, brilliant, now we know what's happened in the past, we can start forecasting what we think is going to happen and rebalance our media plans. That's where we are right now. Hopefully, as we move forward in the kind of the future, we'll get more data streams coming in, more AI attributes coming off of that data, so we can take hot takes on that data, maybe every 5 days to be able to reweight our plans. But of course, attribution isn't going to fall out of the systems, right? The systems are still going to be optimizing to an attributed event, whatever that attributed event is, right? And it might be a proxy like attention, it might be still on clicks, heaven forbid it's still on clicks, but it will be something around that to kind of power the basic brain of the optimization engines. But I think there's a big opportunity again for maybe not the 200 publishers, but for the bigger publishers or publishing sort of conglomerates that come together to try and get access to their data and their performance metrics that they're seeing and pulling that back into kind of our dashboards and our systems so that we can then go, great, we've got this new data feed, we can now use that from a modeling point of view. And that will help us learn, and that will help us educate, and then that will help us replan budgets. But but this year is a big, big year because we're doing all of this as quickly as we can. We're investing upfront in the hope that clients will pay for it as well, right? Because this is all extra work, this is all extra brain power, this is all extra machinery that we have to bake into our own systems. So it's kind of to your point, right? You're building and investing in technology and people, as are we. And we are under pressure from clients because they don't necessarily want to pay for it either. So we're kind of all in this little circle where we're going, this is auxiliary to what we are doing today. Yes, you expect us to always be measuring, but there is basic measurement versus kind of new measurement. And the new measurement, it's got to be the new standard because that's where you're going to be able to see the results of your campaigns.
And prove there was no risk change in between.
And do that and talk to legal for hours on end about all of this data that's lying around. So that's, again, it's like, who had a legal conversation pre-GDPR? Nobody, and now spend hours doing that.
I love legal.
Love legal, you think?
No, I mean, I think a lot of it's already been said, but it's kind of, as those metrics change, how do we create some form of standardization across channels? Because I think, we do get caught up in programmatic as a channel and all the nuances of that, but for a client, it's like across my entire media mix. How do I standardize that measurement and attribution across it? And obviously, that's an ever-changing challenge. It changes for clients. It changes with the industry. And so I think the call out that slowly everyone is becoming a technology business, whether it be a media owner, a traditional tech platform, an agency, a client, they all run multiple different tech stacks to get that information, to allow for that measurement, to allow for that attribution. And how do you manage that across all those channels? And then at the same time, again, how do you compare it versus your baseline? How does that baseline change? Especially when you kind of hit, I don't want to keep saying cookieless, but the deprecation, when we hit that point, all of the benchmarks go out the window unless you have been running other benchmarks that you have agreed, validated, proven out prior to that.
Agreed. So I think some of the clients I've worked with, the retail clients, their challenge is they're a week-on-week client and a year-on-year to the week. So they'll be like, this time last year we had X and now we're actually changing the way we're measuring. And that's proven a challenge already now, right? Because they're saying, oh, we need to get this because we got this last year. And we know economically landscape has changed, the way that we're working has changed. It's really hard to do that. And it's also hard to explain to them that we can't do week on week, but their business runs like that. So we're in that conundrum of how on earth do we explain it? I don't know if you guys have had those challenges and how do you talk to clients, especially because I think a couple of things you've just said resonates with that, with the changing measurement, especially even just the year on year and in the next year, how are we telling clients how their business and performance is doing when it's just continuously moving?
That's every client report, by the way.
Right, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point, and I think what we do again, is like sort of we go back to the measurement frameworks that have stood the test of time so far, and as we add new dimensions into those frameworks, we are still able to report back on some of the metrics, right? And in some ways, retail is fantastic, right? Because retail media is exploding. There's loads of opportunities to be able to tie back what we do in advertising to an actual sale when we go through those layers and those publishers, if I can call them publishers, but those retailers. And so there is a natural reason why the spend is going to go over that way, because there is a natural data set that we can key off, and there is sales that we can follow. The important thing for an agency is to prove out incrementality, which I would suggest is something that we should have been doing way more of all of the time for the last 20 years. I think sometimes we've been overly reliant on attribution and just kind of following the last touch metric. But yeah, I mean, advertisers are going to have to change. I think the understanding of advertisers is also changing, right? So there are way more digital people in kind of client side now than there used to be. You know, when I started off programmatic at GroupM, right, like if I just walk into a room and I'd be like, this is programmatic, and they'd be like, what is what? And they're like, we can do all of the stuff we used to, but it's going to be much better. And I'm like, I don't get it. And you know, we spent 4 years or so, 3 years educating, and then it started really working. And I think now we're just going back to the drawing board, which is how do we re-educate on measurement, cookieless future, geo-testing, incrementality, modeling, data crunching. And the brilliant thing is, I think that the advertisers are all kind of there now. A lot of them come up through digital ranks, which means they innately understand these things. But then again, we're talking to new clients as well, right? We're talking to new types of advertisers, because retail teams are completely different to media and brand sort of advertisers, and they think about life in a very different way. They think week on week, you know, day on day, minute on minute, you know, sort of number of products on the shelf, number of SKUs, and you're like, how many SKUs? And they're like 4,000. And you're like, God, all right, how do we deal with that? And it's a whole new thing. And when you talk about kind of, you know, creativity, it's like, yes, AI will maybe help us speed up things, but you know, generally creativity has been with creative agencies that have, you know, been making 1 or 2 banners. We've been asking for loads of banners for years and years and years, and now that's starting to happen. AI is going to speed that up, but then you're like, okay, but now we need to bring in like loads of different product feeds. We need to bring pricing feeds in. We need to understand the SKUs. We need to understand density. We need to understand where those product feeds are where those products are being stocked. Who's the retailer? Who's driving performance? How do we then kind of gauge and measure that, and how do we temper it at sales so that we can move budgets dynamically, you know, hour on hour, so that we don't get to pages that are out of stock items, because advertisers will hate us if we do that, right? And so on and so on. So it just gets more complex, and we need more money to be going behind all of this from our advertisers. They need to invest in more technology to be able to give us that information, and we need to, I think, partner with you to be able to work out how we can best bring different data sets together to be able to come to, you know, an equitable outcome for all parties.
And I'd add on that when you say it gets more complicated, that was talking about the ads on the page and how we pulling the things into the ad. It's like the tech part in between, where a lot of companies have always done quite well at, I guess, making those changes very streamlined for the end user, for our activation teams. Like, so, you know, when GDPR kicked in, it's not like, suddenly you have 20 more steps in the platform. It's like consent is pulled in through the bid stream already. Mm-hmm. So when you have these sorts of changes, it's changing that mindset with technology partners of, okay, we need to be able to A/B test everything that we're doing. We need to demonstrate that incrementality. We need visibility into exactly why your algorithm is doing what it's doing. And for platforms, that's a big change. So, and they're obviously the ones, the kind of pathways to us being able to put that ad on the page at the end of the day. And that has been something that we've been pushing for, but it is a complete change in kind of in understanding. And so one of my most hated phrases is just test it. And you're like, honestly, you guys must get that all the time as well. But it's like you typically get that from technology companies, and my ask would be, as we kind of push for more insight from them, obviously you have the most insight, so how can you help us bundle what you're suggesting, all these new changes, into an experiment. Like, what do you want to run? What do you want to demonstrate? And not everything we're going to do is going to be test and learn. A lot of it is business as usual. But how do you, if I have to come up with the reason why it's a good thing to test this, you guys are not in a good place. Whereas you know your products and solutions far better than me. So how can you help me come up with an experiment that you want to run that you think will drive real value for our clients? And then we can take that to clients, and then we can push tech partners to facilitate it. And it's just that, as we all do move to becoming technology platforms, that would be my ask, is how do we demonstrate that change in performance and that incrementality in an easy way to our clients?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and I think sometimes we don't have enough time to do that because the brief comes in and we need the answer. Yeah. So sometimes we go to things that we already know that works. But I think moving forward, that's going to be tricky to keep doing that, because with the innovation that's happening, we're missing out on things. So is there a way of working that you are adopting which is allowing you to know the new technology that the publishers or the publishers or the platforms are providing, and to get that to the client in a way that you can comprehend it quick enough, because the cycle is very fast. Are you working with them ahead of time? What do you have in place in order to take advantage of that?
Yeah, I mean, that's something I completely agree, by the way. Like, I know that the brief cycle is relentless, very short timings at times, and it's the same for us. We have to turn around those plans very quickly, based on those week-to-week cycles. And so we're starting to build out those frameworks of, okay, you want us to test something new, here's all the information we'd need. How can... this is the information we need you to provide us to be able to pitch it in a good way. And maybe it's not going to go onto this plan, but if we know this is what you have in the locker, then maybe we can come back to it on the next plan, or it actually, maybe not with that audience, maybe not on quite that channel, but it will work for another one of our clients or a client who's looking to test X. And so we've started to build that and create those sorts of templates. And that's something that I mentioned, the Privacy Sandbox workstream, for example. That's a core part of that, because we don't know, it's ever-changing technology, ever-changing options, and so we need to constantly refresh that and put it in front of clients. So if we don't have that kind of testing framework, testing book almost to take to teams, it's a struggle to hit those timings.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's exactly why we're keeping so close to SSPs above some of the other technology partners, because they can holistically see what's happening in the entire industry. They can see what's happening on the entire ecosystem. There's partners that are offering closed loop measurement, or retailers like Amazon, and ones that can see from end to end. Those are the ones that are giving us more security in these areas. But by staying close to media, and by always staying curious, and by always hearing about what's going on, we can only keep that in the back locker for when we know these conversations are happening, because it won't be that one client got a brief and decided to give the entire industry visibility on it, and then get all of those responses back, and then go back to it, and then fix it, and then get it signed off. So we do have to be aware holistically as an agency about what's the easiest way to get something running, what's the way we're going to please the most amount of people, and what's the way, the most amount of mouths will be fed by doing this solution. So that's why it's got to come from a more higher up perspective.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes a client doesn't know what they want, though.
No.
Then they ask us what we think they want.
And that's why I think, I'm kind of lucky, because I have a team of product people that sit down, and they're all leads in their craft. So we have like two product people, two product leads within Programmatic, and we sit down and we bounce around ideas, and we try and understand what would be, to exactly your point, fitting the most use cases that we see in the market right at that point, or where we think the puck is going to move towards. And our goal then is to just say, right, let's have a go at building a solution, and then let's find one or two test clients to push that into as a way to prove it out. And if it fails, it will fail, and we will move on, and we will just pretend it never happened. And we could learn from it, but probably just move on to the next thing, because there's plenty of other things to test. And so it is important, I think, that agencies structure their teams in that way, but equally, it's important that you talk to our teams and spend time with our teams and kind of nurture those relationships, because we are really busy people all of the time, and it definitely is not getting less busy out there. Like, we are constantly fielding more and more questions. Teams are constantly having to test more things just to get get prepared. There are more client meetings going in because clients now want to know about AI and what we're doing about it. You know, like it's relentless. So it's ultimately you guys and then everyone that works with you kind of building the strategy of how do you push adoption into us, and then how do you get us to listen to you in a way that is meaningful and kind of works for everyone. But it's a busy landscape, and I'm sure you guys will say exactly the same back to me, that you're really busy and it's really hard, and who has time for any of this stuff. But it was nice when we used to go out for coffee.
That was nice. You know, similarly to how I asked the publishers, you know, what's something that would positively change and impact the way that you're working with publishers, that will help your busy life become a little bit less busy and more streamlined going forward? Is there anything, because we're in a room full of mixed teams and publishers here, and, you know, let's ask for what you need to help, really, or suggest some ideas that might help.
Speaking as someone who works closely with the product team, I can see why certain conversations had been annoying for a little while, where we were trying to talk to publishers and partners and saying, instead of selling to us, work with us, partner with us. And there's a real big difference between being a seller and being a partner. And that conversation has been, I think, getting a lot better with everything that's been going on, because it's like, no, we don't want to just give you 10 grand for this 1 month campaign to do this one, you know, like brand study at the end of it. We want to work with you closer on a longer term basis and have more fruitful conversations and have this feed into something that we are doing, so that the agency is bringing value here and that it can work holistically across the board. So I think that has been the main way where the publishers that are willing to partner with us and willing to have those deeper conversations and break things up so that we can like cherry pick and we can work with our solutions and, you know, meet in the middle and integrate things further down the line. Those are the conversations that are thriving, not the ones that are just, I want to sell to you, I want to show you my deck, I want to show you how many markets in these locations I have, and then I want you to, you know, like brief me, and then I want to know why I haven't heard from you next week.
Very specific.
No, I love that. I think that's a really good articulation. It's kind of partnerships are everything, and we all want to do really cool stuff. I don't think there's any people working on the agency side that like just want to do another boring, you know, MPU campaign and we'll just see how it goes. Right? We do want to do interesting things. So it's about building those partnerships, those relationships, and us investing time into deeper integrations. And then it's more sustainable, and then it's quicker for us to activate next time. If it's just a one-off, it's, yeah, sure, you might get one client and that's great. But if you can integrate into our systems, if you can kind of understand what we're trying to drive towards and we can co-create together, and you do that on an agency by agency basis, don't want to be exactly the same as each other, then that will be fun, and I think that will yield results long term. And you know, so one of the ideas or one of the concepts I've always been thinking about is that, you know, really most advertising is pretty local, right? Like the fact that all of you are publishers that represent sort of the UK, we can do stuff that's much more interesting than if we are just working on big platforms. Because of course we can geo-experiment, but for you, I guess we can do more regional things. We can get more regional data out, and we can play with that in a completely different way and talk to people in a completely different way than we currently do. So that would be my tips.
I really like the publisher partnerships. I mean, if you look at the scale of any one individual publisher versus a platform, it's obviously not really a fair comparison. But we almost see the technology platforms we work through as access to the entire market. Like as you said, you know, a lot of publishers are to global clients, they are local. Like they're in a couple of markets, and so for us, the challenge you have, and so we talked about publisher audiences a bit earlier, part of it is a DSP will be like, I have an audience. It is standardized across whatever you do. And so if you buy a sports audience, it is a sports audience. If I go and talk to 10 publishers, I've got 10 different sports audiences. And I know there's taxonomies, and I know that there are kind of best practices, and sometimes we like to verify them, not enough. But for me, it's kind of, you'll then have an activation team who's like, well, these 5 sports audiences worked great for me. These 5 didn't. Is it the sports audience? Is it the publisher? And so when you then have publisher kind of cooperation, you can build out, you know, like seller-defined audiences or whatever it is, and it changed the conversation from it's an open web buy, I'm using DSP data, to, okay, I've got trusted partners in market who have collaborated around you know, a unified taxonomy. And I understand as well that obviously this is stuff that's been built out for a while. Like seller-defined audiences, like consistent taxonomy with some partners has been there. And there's not been the adoption because cookies still exist. But it's those sorts of things that to me will, that's the sort of partnership and response that we want in future. When targeting functionality will change, if I can have a consistent taxonomy that's trusted, that scales, that's something that clients can use to optimize against, and that becomes the standard. And then it's like, well, we can pull in and out things like, well, is it an MPU or a leaderboard? You know, which part of the country is it? Like, what devices am I targeting? And that becomes a constant rather than, okay, which of these 10 is good, which of them are bad.
Whose foodie is better than another person's foodie?
Yeah, exactly. And obviously that's where we hope that you go from the boring sports audience to, okay, these people like this kind of trainer, like, and you can build those custom things, and that leads to that. But that starting point to me is, especially when you're looking at like open market or kind of curated deal spend, is how you can do it at scale, because that's the sort of comparison that the performance will be against. It's not like, okay, this one publisher that was X% of my open exchange budget did this. It's like, these were my strategies within it, and this is how it compares to what I did in search or social or wherever it might be.
Yeah.
Good advice, I think, and some of them are big, longer term, and I think some of the things that we can probably do right now, but partnerships, I also love partnerships, is probably key, probably just for getting started. I want to touch on in-house proprietary tools. I know a lot of agencies, big and small, and even brand client side, are creating tools in-house. And do you want to talk a little bit about that and how you think is that a positive thing? Is it helping, or is it just making things a bit more complicated to where you put your media and what tools you use?
Well, we wouldn't build them if they weren't good. And as Martin said, we're not the same. We like to be different. So obviously tools are part of that. And I think that it's where you do see, even within a client, the tools that they use, the kind of way that they set up their data, the way that they feed that into our systems, what they're optimizing towards, that changes everything further downstream. And so it's very difficult to build something that suits every use case. But to the points earlier, it's the same around the products. Like, how do you build something that can facilitate the best possible scale for the most possible clients and give them outcomes? And obviously with different inputs, ending up on different places, but creating something that can be scaled. Because again, at the end of the day, programmatic is a subset of what we're doing in digital, what we're doing cross platforms of what. And so from a client's perspective, they're looking at what they can scale across everything they do rather than narrowing in. And I mean, I say this, obviously, work in programmatic, so I'm all about this when I'm talking to clients, but we always have to kind of zoom out to what's their overall view, like how many products are they selling, like what are they looking like year on year.
If you had one client that was up for pitch between all three of us, then it would be the products that we have and the solutions that we have underneath us that is what's differentiating us apart, because otherwise it's just, the service model and, like the team size and, and that kind of thing. So I do feel like they are doing a benefit in helping us differentiate from each other, but also make it easier for the clients because we know what we have in-house. We're able to get closer to how it works and how much better we're making it. We're able to have a more holistic solution that works across all of the publishers and all of the channels and ecosystems that we're running on. So I definitely see a value in it, and I definitely think it's a much easier solution when you can explain how it works across the publishers that you're working with rather than someone's individual one, because then, like we said, we're not going to be comparing one person's solution against another. We're working with an in-house solution that works across a lot more than that.
Yeah, we only build to make our lives easier.
Yeah.
But it's really, we're not trying to make the ecosystem more complicated, more difficult. We are trying to simplify things for ourselves, our teams, the people we work with, and our clients. So we build, we price, and then we hope that lands and works. There's a few different layers to kind of building products, right? Because it obviously takes time, investment, money, and it's very different in different agency groups. And I think there's kind of reality that there's always a global view on product, and that will always be developed out of a global team, and they will miss the market nuances because they don't think like that. They think about all clients in all markets all of the time, and then we have to receive those products and try and adapt them. Or we look at our own kind of product timelines and our own product development in market, and we say, these are the ones we want to partner with, and this is the partnerships that we're going to develop over the next 12 to 24 months, and we kind of build out a timeline on that. Or these are the things that we want to immediately deliver into our teams because we know that they're either easier to build or slightly less heavy lift, or we're just going to put a lot of money and time and investment in because it solves a challenge, right? Whatever that challenge might be. And so that's generally how we will think about products and product development in terms of the roadmap. But yes, we always try to zoom back out to the widest aperture that we can, because we will fix things like inventory, right? Like, inventory is always one of those ones that people like us to talk about. We will look at how do we make sure that we get consistency in our inventory. How do we score that inventory? How do we think about adding new sites into that, refreshing it, taking sites off, all of those great things that we have to do. How do we bring new metrics into that scoring system like attention, right? What does that mean? How do our teams then adopt that? But equally, that's very channel specific. But what we try and do is then say from that, how do we take what we've learned there and try and apply it to other channels? So how does attention really play out? How do we want to bring that data into the social sphere? How do we want to bring that into connected TV? Does that feel like something that needs to be looked at? Do we want to bring that into TV planning and buying? Because, hey, we've got this whole other world of kind of addressable TV that we need to kind of lean into very quickly and do more in. It's always innovating. There's more partners coming on. There's more TV channels coming on, more inventory coming on. So we think about that, right? And that's just when you just think about inventory and kind of what the supply looks like. And so we're just constantly evolving from that. But that's, it's doing it from a simplification process and to make us look smart in front of our clients. Because when we are in pitches, we are kind of on two different trajectories. It's price, product, right? And everything else is pretty much standard, right? Like we can all buy media at more or less the same rates. We can all kind of make the same guarantees to our clients. We can all ensure quality, but what are the other bits that they can lean into that say, one agency is better than the other agency? Clearly, KINESSO is the best agency on the floor. But
and that is where the partnerships conversations will come in again, because some of these products aren't fully fledged perfect from day one. They will have gaps or holes in them or something where someone else in the market will be market leading on it, and that's where we want to work together. So it's like, help us make our product better. We will partner with you. You will be, not only improving this, but also driving this. But that is a partnership between both that benefits the agency and benefits longer term conversations.
Yeah, I think some of the best collaborative work happens at pitch stages, because you're coming up with things that probably aren't even out yet. And you're working with a particular publisher or a set of publishers to say, these are things that we want to present that we will do in the future. And then that's when your sort of partnership begins. And then if you win the pitch, you might not necessarily do everything that you said on there, but it's going in kind of that direction, which is interesting. Also, there was a comment earlier about incrementality, which I thought was an interesting one with tech companies. I think to release budget is about incrementality sometimes. So that's something we're probably going to see a lot more of as people think about where they're going to spend their budgets. So I wanted to ask you all a final question, which is, what do you think that's going to positively impact the way that we're going to work for the rest of this year? We know that it's all uncertain, right now, but we just need to find a way to talk to clients and put things in place that's going to future-proof us a little bit. So is there one or two things that you're working on now that's going to help you for the rest of 2024 and set you up for the future?
Reassurance. So obviously, if you look out in the press and you're like, what's going on in programmatic and digital? It's like doom and gloom everywhere. That is not particularly inspiring to, I want to test in this, this place of doom and gloom.
Time.
Yeah, and so it is one of the things we're trying to do. And like, if you look at the stuff coming out, like, Mode A and Mode B labels, you're like, great, that's going to be an in-depth conversation I'm going to have. That's, instead it's how can you bring reassurance that, okay, yeah, a lot of stuff's changing. We have solutions that we have, and whether it be, we've had contextual for a long time, we can offer you up that, certainty of this is a time-proven solution, but just, and so less pot shots in the press would be nice, but it's kind of, the internet isn't going to suddenly break. stuff is going to continue to work. You will continue to sell products online. The partnerships that you've built will continue to flourish. It's just they're going to change. And so for us, it's that message of reassurance, of manageable change, and why testing is so important to maintaining your kind of brand position and future. And so for us, doing a client education piece this afternoon around exactly that, like what does the privacy sandbox mean for clients? Because we want them to feel that reassurance. We want them to see the open web as a safe space, as a space that they can really drive value for their brands. And so for us, it's kind of when you're going into client teams, well, you know, this part is changing, but we still have all of this, and providing that kind of messaging back to our teams.
Optimistic, I like it. Yeah, so
Gotta be.
I'm the same. I mean, I think we open up all of our conversations with, you know, there's a bit of doom and gloom as well. Like we talk to our clients because we are trying to force them to understand that things are changing and it's going to change rapidly. So sometimes I kind of go into those conversations on a bit of a negative standpoint and say, look, think about it. Those cookies are going to be gone. We're going to have to adapt. We're going to have to change. You're going to have to rethink your plans. You're going to have to rethink your investment strategies. But equally, we go in with quite an optimistic approach because there is loads more data flying around. There's loads more opportunities to be able to suck that data. There's loads more opportunities to be able to bring that, model it, think about it in new ways. Clients are getting their stuff together now. Their consent is more or less in order. We can bring that data into clean rooms. We can try matching. That's a slower process, right? Everyone knows that there's a scale issue in matching just in general, but it's an approach that we'll take. We are building a lot more experimentation tools on our side to try and make sure that we're proving out everything that we try. But it goes back to what Rory said, like, if you can be optimistic, that'd be great. And if you can help partner with us and lean into some of those measurement conversations. For me, measurement is the biggest thing this year, like beyond anything else. It's like we won't do things if we can't measure it because we can't prove it. So we have to find new ways to be able to prove out measurement. And once we get that kind of cracked and get clients on board with the fact that some of this is going to be modeled, some of it's going to be your data telling us what's happening, some of their data we're going to bring in because we've not previously had access to. That's great, right? That's where we want to move towards. And then who can't be excited about the AI opportunities and being able to learn new insights on, you know, streams of data that we've never kind of researched or gone through.
I think holistic success will be key. So we just need to keep on just zooming out almost. I almost feel like everybody in their own world is like a little planet, but the more you keep zooming out, it's like, okay, here's the solar system, here's the universe, here's the supply, here's, you know, who's on top of that. And it's about those solutions that go all the way to the top that will make our life easier, about what we're running, what we're improving, and what we're making measurable. So just, you know, get to the bigger picture, think outwards, help from the top so that, you know, things will be easier for us.
Make life easier.
Make life easier. Yeah, I think they're the three really good ones. So reassurance, measurement, and sort of top down, right? Top down, and that's going to require a bit of education because probably those are busy just ensuring the wheels are turning and less in the details. So we're going to have to. There's a bit of a job to educate there.